Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley McManus, Director of Marketing at Affectiva. Welcome to Affectiva Asks, a human-centric AI podcast, where each episode we will interview a thought leader doing cutting-edge work in the AI space. A little bit about us. Affectiva is the pioneer of human perception AI, software that can detect nuanced human emotions, complex cognitive states, behaviors, activities, and interactions. And Affectiva is applying this technology to advance the next generation of multimodal in-cabin sensing. Today's episode features Affectiva's product manager, Mike Gionfriddo. During the interview, he talks to us a bit about his background in startups focused on in-vehicle technology, what he sees as challenges within the automotive industry, and how Affectiva's human perception AI technology plays into that. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. With me, I have Mike, product manager at Affectiva. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start with your background. Can you speak to your career trajectory and how you arrived to your role at Affectiva today?
Sure. So early on, when I was in college, I was drawn to engineering, science, and ended up graduating, working in kind of more of a project management role originally at Pitney Bowes as an intern, and then later at Eversource. And during that time, starting in college from my dorm room, I started my own company. We did dashboards for vehicles with LCD screens in place, which we ended up focusing a lot on aftermarket. The name of the company was Liquidware. We eventually were able to save up enough money and have enough revenue from that I was able to start my own company and quit my day job. So I did that for a while. We eventually sold the assets of the company and ended up moving on to kind of other startups where I later worked at Gionfriddo, which worked on wireless charging for electric autonomous vehicles. And now I'm here at Affectiva.
Cool. Awesome. So can you describe your current role a little bit more and maybe talk about what you're working on at Affectiva?
Sure. Kind of the way I see the product management role in general is talking with customers and with the market to understand exactly what the market needs, what the market's willing to pay for, and understand why the market needs those things. And from there, then define product requirements and work with the in-house engineering team and development team to be able to build a product that will meet those needs. So at Affectiva, it's a very similar role, except we have the cross-function of AI integrating into automotive. So there's a lot of unique challenges that come along with that.
Right. I was just going to say, what are the key challenges the industry faces in terms of improving road safety?
Yeah, so adding AI into the auto industry is something that's starting to increase more and more as this technology becomes available. So as far as road safety goes, there's a lot of sensors that are being added into the vehicles, and that's creating a really unique opportunity to improve safety all around the vehicle, including cameras being focused on the driver to ensure that the driver's actually aware of what's going on and paying attention and being their very best.
What are the opportunities for shaping new in-cabin sensing solutions, and what role will Affectiva technology play in that?
So at Affectiva, we're, as far as in-cabin sensing, one of the major products that I work on from the driver monitoring side is drowsiness detection. So there's a camera that's kind of near the steering wheel, and that camera looks at the face of the driver, and from being able to look at their entire face, which is where we can really leverage our years of human perception AI and emotion AI technology, we can be able to determine drowsiness as it unfolds over time. So drowsiness isn't something that instantaneously happens where you just fall asleep. You progress through these states of drowsiness. And by looking at the face, we can kind of track as those states of drowsiness unfold. And in continuing kind of from that, the best signal for drowsiness is the eyes. You look at someone's eyes when they're getting drowsy, they blink more, their blink is slower, and that's a very clear signal, but it's not always available, especially in an automotive setting where you're driving around, people wear different kinds of glasses, different heights from the camera angle don't exactly match. So by being able to look at the entire face when the eyes aren't available, you can have a more robust drowsiness detection system. So that's kind of a huge application for kind of improving safety on the driver monitoring side of things. And even beyond that, being able to see the entire face can help reduce false positives. So if someone is squinting because the sun's shining in their eyes, or if someone's laughing and their eyes are closed, you don't want the drowsiness system to beep at you and tell you to go get a cup of coffee, because that's immediately going to make the user very upset.
What about distraction? Is that something that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so distraction is something that is also a very good solution for kind of computer vision, looking at the driver, and incorporating that information holistically with all these other sensors that you have in the vehicle give a very clear picture of if someone is distracted or not. I think the challenge with with the distraction is what do you do once you know someone's distracted? So, for example, if somebody is swerving, the vehicle's radar systems and camera systems can detect that, okay, you're veering out of your lane. That's probably distraction. You could have interior cameras that are looking at the driver and determine that, oh, they're not even looking at the road, or they keep looking at the passenger, or they're talking on their cell phone. There's infinite amount of distraction kind of mechanisms, but by combining all of these sensors, you can have a very clear, definitive understanding on if someone is distracted or not and how distracted they are. And once you have a good understanding of kind of how distracted they are, the next step is determining, okay, why are they distracted? How are they distracted? How do we bring their attention back to the road? And that problem's a little bit harder to solve. And it's interesting seeing the different approaches that each OEM takes to solving that problem philosophically. And I think the short-term solutions are a little different than the long-term solutions. But for example, somebody might be on their cell phone. That would be a different adaptation if they're talking on their cell phone on a conference call, bringing their attention back to the road, than if they're, for example, making a mess in the car, or eating, or looking for something. Or texting. So having the right adaptation is really important, and having a camera looking at the driver can help understand what type of distraction the person is dealing with.
Right. So you spoke on challenges as the industry faces, but I'm curious what you think some of the technical hurdles are, and like the most challenging to overcome when you're thinking about building these systems.
So in the short term, the auto industry today, which is a primary focus of where we're deploying this technology, still receives a lot of their revenue from kind of per unit sales. Down the road, we do see there being kind of a shift to more of a service type revenue model, but it's right now it's primarily based on these per unit sales, and with that, the cost of the system is really important, because individual consumers are eventually buying these vehicles, and anywhere where you can kind of keep the costs down is really important. The auto industry has a huge emphasis on safety, so they're willing to spend the money on a lot of the safety features, but as far as some of these new safety features that are still unclear on what the longer term impact of improvement for road safety will be, there's a little bit less of a focus towards it. So what that means is, from an AI standpoint, is that we have processors and embedded systems with less overall resources, less RAM, less storage capability, just less processing power. So in order to improve the AI to the point where you have a large amount of robustness and reliability, you really need to include a lot of data and training your models, and then ultimately what that does is that makes your model bigger and more complex in order to hit these accuracy targets. But there's also a balance of a lot of pressure in order to have a high performance but use even less resources than you use. So constantly balancing those two things is absolutely a huge challenge that the industry has as it starts to use AI for the safety systems.
How do you see the role of OEMs and Tier 1s transforming with so much industry change?
Yeah, so the role of OEMs and Tier 1s, I think it's a lot to what I was talking about before, where we see their revenue model almost shifting. And you can see a lot of the OEMs starting to make strategic investments together. These are companies that have historically been fierce rivals and are now making investments in either the future of mobility with ride sharing or even in autonomous vehicles. So I see a lot more kind of alignment strategically as I think these companies realize that they're more alike than they are different, which is, I think, a huge paradigm shift to the previous generations of vehicles.
Definitely. So are you seeing any other trends in your conversations with them or our partners, or is this pretty much it?
Yeah, I think the trends are ultimately bridging the gap, because I think that there's consensus on that the future will eventually be a reduction of individual car ownership and these autonomous robo-taxis driving around. But we're still a ways away from that. So I think that the road there, it looks different from each OEM and Tier 1's perspective. Some are focusing more on these autonomous vehicles in very confined use cases. So on maybe a geofenced road where the vehicle is protected from pedestrians and kind of acting more as a shuttle, or even just having similar to the zip car model, where you have a car that you can just access and use at your convenience. And I think there's kind of multiple ways of bridging the gap, and we're going to see a hybrid of all of these business models be successful at various degrees.
Awesome. Are there any technical innovations in mobility that really excite you?
So I'm going to get a little off the automotive topic, and I'm going to talk about my electric scooter.
It's still mobility.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is, and you even see the automotive companies investing in some of these transportation companies, these scooter share, bike share companies. But from my perspective, so I own my own electric scooter because they don't really have scooter share in Boston for
yet.
Yeah, not yet, but it's become very very popular in other parts of the country. And it's interesting kind of watching how much of a problem and how much negative press it gets in other parts of the country, where here in Boston, it's everyone that has an electric scooter, it's personally owned. But I think it's an interesting thing that's happened with kind of this kind of shared micromobility, if you will, where there's been all this innovation in the electrification of vehicles from the automotive side, as well as different markets. There's actually been a lot of innovation on electric scooters in the Singapore market, just because vehicles are very expensive to own there. So they've come up with these very fast and effective electric scooters. And then this whole kind of the Uber model, where you can use an app on your phone and the Internet of Things, being able to access devices all over, has really created what people are calling the scooter apocalypse, where basically all these scooter companies are dropping these scooter vehicles off everywhere. So that's been, I think, an interesting thing to watch, and how disruptive that is, and how the auto industry is trying to figure out how that fits into what they're doing.
So why is it an apocalypse? Because people are using more scooters than cars?
That's a great question. So what's happened in San Francisco and San Jose is these companies have come in with these scooters that they basically just dropped on the roads. And they didn't work with the municipalities to put them there, and they basically put them on sidewalks, and people who use them there's really no etiquette that exists for them, and you don't really put them in a bike rack. They're like, you just you go ahead and you scan it with your phone, and then you can ride to where your destination, and then people just leave it there. But people don't understand that these are public sidewalks, and you need to leave these devices in a safe place so that People with children can get by safely, or the elderly can get by, or handicapped individuals. And the other day when I was in San Jose, I saw somebody use it. And these scooter apps have been, these scooter companies make you take a picture of your scooter to show that you've parked it safely. And I saw somebody use it, and he stopped right in the middle of the sidewalk in front of the stairs. And then he paused because he had to take a picture of his scooter. And he turned around and he took a picture of it in the middle of the sidewalk and then just kept going. And it dawned on me that this person has no idea why they were supposed to take a picture of their scooter.
Take a selfie.
So it's been interesting to watch how the municipalities have really reacted to this, as well as the rideshare companies, and how they're trying to adapt to this, because it's happening very fast, and they're not completely able to see it all happening.
Okay, cool. So speaking of your trips, let's talk about your travels. So you've gone to CES earlier this year. I know you spoke on a panel recently, that event in California. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some speakers that you saw, or trends, or any kind of fresh insights that you have.
Yeah, I think just kind of talking to people in general, it's interesting that, so as kind of part of my role, I'm constantly talking with all of these automakers and people in the mobility industry, and it's very obvious that cameras will be facing inside the cabin of vehicles, and all vehicles will have cameras facing inside at the occupants. And I think a lot of people, I've accepted this as truth, but I think a lot of people haven't really accepted that this is the future. And I think it definitely makes people feel a little uncomfortable that there's going to be so many cameras just kind of looking at you, and there's absolutely no way to avoid this.
Are they connected to the internet, or are they just self-contained? Like, what's the role of the camera? Like, how does it work?
Yeah,
maybe you could explain that a little bit more.
In the short term, for the personal vehicle ownership, these cameras will primarily be used for kind of safety systems and improving the user experience. So those cameras will most likely not be connected to the internet. Most of the ones being deployed now are not connected to the internet. But going forward, when you, for example, use a vehicle share program, what might happen is they want to make sure that the vehicle is is clean at the end of the trip, or if it's an autonomous vehicle, they want to make sure that all the occupants in the vehicle are safe. So in these cases, there's AI that you can put on the vehicle itself, so that you don't have to send up any video feed or camera information. But I think it's still unclear what the long-term position will be on that footage. But most of the use cases that we hear are improving kind of the user experience, making sure that all of the users are safe, making sure that there's a clean vehicle, making sure that all of the objects from the vehicle are taken with the people that brought them there. So there's, I think, a lot of clear use cases where just computer vision and the camera technology can really help make an enjoyable mobility experience.
Yeah, and as you were talking, another use case popped into my head: road safety for fleet and truckers, and how can something like that be helpful?
Yeah, so with fleets, we've been seeing a lot of interest for driver monitoring primarily. So making sure that the driver is, especially if you're talking like a bus fleet, the occupants in the bus are very valuable. It's a very valuable cargo. So making sure that the driver is fully awake, and that they're paying attention and they're not distracted and looking at their cell phone is really important to ensure the safety of themselves as well as all the occupants. So there's a lot of focus on using cameras for driver training, to be able to teach a driver how to avoid certain situations, and then as far as monitoring, being able to have an intervention when the driver is falling asleep, for example, having the dispatch give them a phone call, seeing if they need a break, whatever that intervention might need to be. I think it's important that we have the ability to detect whether they're drowsy or distracted or not. And since we have that ability, it's in society's best interest to protect the occupants of the vehicle in those cases.
Awesome. I was curious if you have any recommendations for listeners on, events to attend, books to read, publications to follow based on what you're kind of looking at every day.
So, I guess as far as events to go to, I think that there's our Motion AI Summit. So I definitely recommend that people go to that and at least follow it. I think I'll have Ashley put in the link to that at the end of the podcast.
Absolutely.
I don't have it on hand. But that'll be really interesting in talking about how emotion AI, human perception AI, is going to be used in day-to-day life.
Can you explain what human perception AI is now that you've queued it up?
Oh, yes. So human perception AI is having cameras that are looking at the occupants as well as audio. Looking at a person and being able to interpret how they're feeling emotionally, how awake they are cognitively, if they're paying attention, not paying attention, what devices they're interacting with, whether it's a cell phone or if they're eating. So having kind of this full understanding of what a human is doing, and ultimately this will lead us to understanding their intent, which is going to be very valuable in being able to create remarkable user experiences.
Last question we're asking all of our guests. If your car could do one thing in the future to make your life a little easier, what would it be?
So not necessarily my car, but this is one of, I think, my biggest frustrations in mobility, is when I want to transport my children. So there's, like right now I have these 2 car seats that are in the back of my car and my wife's car, and installing them properly, rear-facing, is a huge pain. You have to get it tied down now and really crank it tight to make it securely fastened. And then if I want to go ahead and take a cab or something, I essentially take these car seats with me, which when I'm moving, they're not installed properly or they're not installed kind of in the ideal situation. You're using the seat belt as opposed to the clamps. And I think it would definitely make my life a lot easier if there were already car seats in kind of these rideshare vehicles, or at least the option to quickly add them in. Because I think you kind of think about it today in 2019. Everyone's been in a rideshare vehicle. Not my kids, because it's very inconvenient.
Yeah.
So I end up just driving everywhere and getting rental cars. And it's just not the ideal solution when you're traveling.
It could be an option when you're requesting, like, I need 2 car seats.
Yeah, and I think they've experimented with that. Uber and Lyft experimented with that in the New York City market. But it's not something that I think they've solved as having an easy solution, because then that kind of means now this asset is being used to transport children as opposed to, I think there's a lot of liability.
I was going to say liability.
Yeah, but if I could have any feature, having that problem be solved would be really interesting.
So would it be like a ride share feature or just...
I don't know how it will be solved.
Okay.
But so this weekend, for example, I'm going to Pittsburgh to visit my family. If I could just have a vehicle there with the car seats installed, and then I don't have to, that vehicle can just drop me off downtown, that would be great. But that's really just not an option.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, that's all I have for you today. So I just wanted to thank you, Mike, for your time, and thanks for listening.
Mike's work at Affectiva really focuses on how the company can improve road safety, specifically with regard to our human perception AI offering. What I found most interesting about our chat was the balance that must be struck with AI between helping OEMs and Tier 1s keeping costs down with a minimal processing footprint, while also providing accurate real-time estimates of emotions and cognitive states with highly efficient models. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember to subscribe to Affectiva's Human-Centric AI podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes. We're also on social media, so please reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Affectiva to share any feedback you have on the show and weigh in on the discussion using hashtag AffectivaAsks. Don't forget to rate us to help make the podcast more discoverable for others. Until next time, thanks for listening.
you.